I really would rather be remembered for is somebody who created opportunities for millions of women to go beyond their self-imposed sense of limitation.
The famous Boston Marathon was run exclusively by male athletes from around the world starting in 1897. This changed in 1967 when Kathrine Switzer became the first woman to officially run the race.
In 1967, Kathrine Switzer changed social norms by becoming the first woman to run the Boston Marathon, sparking a mix of both anger and support. This revolutionary race opened the door for women's athletics, bringing progress to running, reforming the perspective of women's capabilities, and allowing them to compete alongside men.
Kathrine Switzer, from revolution at the starting line to reform at the finish.
Kathrine Switzer was born on January 5, 1947 in Amberg, Germany. Just 2 years later, her family relocated to the United States, settling in Virginia.
One day I told my father I was going to be a cheerleader, and he said, no, you don't want to be a cheerleader. He said, life is to participate, not to spectate. And your school has something called field hockey. Get out and run a mile every day. You'd make that field hockey.
Kathrine Switzer transferred to Syracuse University. Since the university lacked a women's running program, she was invited to train with the men's cross-country team. On this team, she was able to make an ally with coach Arnie Briggs. Arnie doubted Kathrine's ability to run a full marathon.
My beloved Arnie Briggs said, a woman can't run the Boston Marathon. And I said, what do you mean a woman can't run the Boston Marathon? He said, women are too weak and too fragile.
And we argued, and finally he said, okay, look, if you show me in practice, I'll be the first person to take you. We ran 26.2 miles. He said, I can't believe it. And I said, I think it's too short. Let's run another 5 miles.
This revolutionary moment where Switzer ignored the rules to do what she believed should be normalized was the start of a tremendous change. April 19, 1967, Kathrine Switzer signed up for the marathon under KV Switzer. Kathrine Switzer with her coach, Arnie Briggs, and her boyfriend, Tom Miller.
We're wearing black plastic garbage bags so we would stay warm. Kathy had her hoodie up, and I didn't think any of us were hiding. I thought all we were doing was trying to stay warm.
Pulled up my shirt with a bib number on here. They checked it off and pushed me into the starting pen. And I said to Arnie, I went like this, and he said, see, I told you there wasn't going to be any problem.
The marathon begins. Instead of receiving dislike from other runners, they were actually excited for her.
And other runners would come by, they would say, oh, it's a girl. And they were so excited. And Arnie was saying, yep, I've trained her.
As Kathrine and her team reach mile 2, the press truck comes in front of Kathrine, behind another vehicle riding Jock Semple, the race's co-director.
Saying that there's a girl in your race, Jocko. He lost his temper. And he ran up behind me. This fierce face was right in my face. He screamed at me and said, get the hell out of my race and give me those numbers.
Kathrine's boyfriend, Tom, gives Semple a good push off of Switzer.
My coach, eyes got huge. We all got very scared. Then he said, run like hell. And the press was accelerating and screaming at me, you know, what are you trying to do? When are you going to drop out? And I was so afraid.
Then it got very quiet. Snow's coming down. I turned to Arnie and I said, Arnie, I'm going to finish this race on my hands and my knees if I have to. Nobody believes that I can do this. Suddenly I realized, you know, if I don't finish this race, then everybody's going to believe women can't do it.
Kathrine finished the race in 4 hours and 20 minutes.
Till about midnight, when we were driving back from Boston to Syracuse University and we stopped on the thruway, we see the newspapers and the covered front and back of all the different editions with the pictures.
People like journalists and the press left negative reports.
I realized that now this was very, very important, and this was going to change my life, and it was probably going to change women's sports.
These reactions before and even during the marathon are what sparked Kathrine Switzer's eagerness to revolutionize the opinion and barriers on women's capability to run.
Kathrine Switzer's exposure to discrimination against women helped legislators argue and pass Title IX on June 23, 1972. This prohibited discrimination based on sex in education programs and activities. Doors for women in sports and education were now open.
In 1972, women were officially allowed to compete in the Boston Marathon. Kathrine Switzer sparked a change for women's distance running, allowing runners like Nina Kazuk, the first woman to officially run the Boston Marathon, and Sarah Mae Berman, who won 3 times unofficially. All 3 of these athletes would bring the cause to light, making women's running official.
In 1972, Kathrine Switzer and Nina Kuzik worked to create the 6-mile Crazy Leg mini marathon. This opened up more opportunities to help reform women's athletics.
Thanks to impacts made by Kathrine Switzer, just 9 years later, in 1976, the CIF decided to add girls cross country as an official sport. The CIF is the organization that controls California sports. Kathrine Switzer paved the way for other girls to be able to race.
In 1977, Kathrine founded the Avon International Running Circuit, a program for women athletes which grew to have 400 races in 27 countries with over 1 million women given the opportunity to run.
November 23, 1981, the first NCAA women's cross-country race was held. Betty Springs was the first woman to win the Division I NCAA title, marking the beginning of a new era for women.
She was born to win. Dating all the way back to high school and before, she won races, she won awards, and she won championships. You can make a strong argument that Betty was America's premier women's distance runner in the 1980s. And she thoroughly dominated collegiate track and cross-country in her time at NC State. When she repeated as cross-country national champion in 1983, she became the first woman to ever win the event twice. Betty Springs wasn't just born to run, she was born to win.
The International Olympic Committee voted in 1981 to add the women's marathon into the 1984 Olympics. 49 athletes from 28 countries were able to compete. Kathrine Switzer's act of justice was able to reform the way the public saw women. Joanne Benoit Samuelson was the first woman to win the first Olympic marathon.
Representing the United States of America, Olympic champion Joan Benoit.
From Kathrine Switzer's revolutionary act, not only does she hope to have a change, but we also see it where a line for women now exists and is also continuing to reform and increase.
In 2017, named after her 1967 bib number, Switzer launched the nonprofit organization
261 Fearless!
This global organization uses running as a means to empower women to overcome life's obstacles, fostering self-esteem, confidence, and a sense of fearlessness through local running clubs, educational programs, and events.
We call a little running holiday.
Women feel like they have a community outside of work, outside of home.
They've never thought in terms of taking time out for themselves, let alone running or walking outside. This is a whole new attitude for them. And they're having a hard time embracing it, but they are.
Our club in Chile, very diversity of nationalities. We are very similar in one thought. We want a safe space for us to run.
Kathrine Switzer has helped create hundreds of running clubs around the world to help include and encourage women to run.
To reach women where they can't even go to the house alone. They're not allowed to drive a car, they're not allowed to get an education. If somehow running can somehow give them the sense of strength where they are no longer victims and vulnerable.
Kathrine Switzer ultimately worked as a catalyst leading to vigorous amounts of female accomplishments, influencing and reforming what men assumed of women's abilities. Kathrine Switzer's fearless decision to run the 1967 Boston Marathon ignited a revolution that reshaped the world of distance running and challenged the limits placed on women in sports. Her courageous act sparked strong reactions and advocates around the world. Yet it was precisely these reactions that fueled widespread reform. Throughout her persistence, leadership, and lifelong dedication, Switzer proved that women not only belonged in long-distance running, but could thrive in it. Her legacy lives on every woman who laces up her shoes, empowered by the path she forged and the barriers she broke, transforming running into a more inclusive and equitable sport for generations to come.
We're in the middle of this race now. We're not done yet, but we're running strong. Stay fearless.